Здравствуйте. Я
Good morning. I'm Alexey, your guide to the world of the future. I'm happy to welcome you to the International Symposium Inventing the Future at the Russia National Center. We have among us scientists, sci-fi writers, futurologists, philosophers, representatives of the government, business circles, and creative community. You're unique experts. Your ideas will define the future. And let what is impossible today become possible tomorrow.
Вот теперь все получилось.
Now it's working. Good morning, dear friends. I'm happy to welcome you all. My name is Alexey Goreslavsky. I'm the director of the Institute for Internet Development, and I have the honor and privilege to moderate our event this morning. Happy to welcome you here. A warm welcome to our foreign guests. I will not speak very fast so that our interpreters don't have a very hard time. I'm really happy to see you all here at this session, which is called The Formula for Interaction Between Scientists and Content Creators. And here is what we're going to discuss and why I am the person moderating this event. The Institute for Internet Development, it's a Russian organization that is in charge of administering government subsidies for promotion of content online, such as blogging content, games, videos, and online media. Obviously, for obvious reasons, we encounter sci-fi and fantasy a lot in our work, and that's why we're going to discuss it today. Many Russians or foreigners grew up reading the masterpieces of world science fiction. We remember that the stuff of science fiction that we used to see in the movies is a reality today, such as smartphones, tablets, video conferencing calls, something that seemed to be completely off the wall when we were young. Or take the Russian writer Gordeyev. Back in the 1940s, he envisioned undersea gear that only appeared later. Or the writer Yefremov basically described a thumb drive back in the 1950s. So we all grew up reading Jules Verne and imagining people traveling to the moon or navigating the seas in a submarine. 20 years ago, when I worked as a journalist, I used to interview many celebrities, and all of them would say, I was inspired by this or that book or movie. What does it mean to be inspired? What they were inspired for was a certain image, the image of a person discovering something new and creating new things. Science fiction gives you a chance to imagine that is unimaginable. Like a sculptor looking at a piece of marble or granite envisions a figure hidden inside, only waiting to be revealed. The same applies to science fiction. And then engineers and technical specialists come to the scene and create something like a tablet. The first 20 or 30 or 100 or 1,000 attempts to create a tablet fail. But then we end up with what everyone has in front of us on the table, like a smartphone with a touch screen, maybe a bendable display, and so on and so forth. So it's important to dream, and especially important it is for young adults and for kids, for people whose brains are developing. They are curious about the world. They imbibe all kinds of information. So if you give them good books, good movies to watch, good games to play, you can end up with exciting results. You can help educate people who are going to be open to the world and enthusiastic. Now, what have we achieved as, or tried to achieve as the Institute for Internet Development? For the development of Russian sci-fi content, shall we say. We have two areas of work. We support TV shows with a sci-fi component. Just yesterday, well, it was more about fantasy, not sci-fi, but we're talk about this competition later today. They are competing for audience, but just yesterday there was the release of a fantasy series called The Mallet of Witches, with a subheadline, with a tagline, Rus people against evil powers. It's based on Russian folklore, and you should give it a try. You might like it. 3 years ago, we were launching the decade of Russian science and technology. And back then, we realized that content makers have a very weird ideas about scientists and how they live, while scientists are afraid of content producers because they are always eager to cast them as mad scientists. All scripts and projects that were submitted to us looked like some kind of a crime comedy or a romantic comedy, just with some scientists added to the script. It was cringe, as young people these days say. So we thought we should bring content creators and scientists together. We invited a number of younger scientists from the Russian Academy of Sciences and other academic institutions. We invited people from production companies, and we organized some get-togethers between them so that they could share ideas. After a year of those meetings, about 50 projects emerged, such as talk shows, reality shows, pitches for TV series that were then pitched publicly in front of young scientists at the Congress of Young Scientists in Sochi. There were 6 projects that made it to the shortlist. The others were debunked as something harmful, something completely detached from reality. So the shortlist included 6 projects. 3 years later, we have 5 solid projects. 2 of them are in the second season. One of them is the show Science for Everyone, where Alexey Fedorov and his partner invite scientists and bloggers and have a dialogue between them and try to find out the truth and, search for the meaning behind science. So it's a very long and hard journey from the inception to the final result. We're just beginning to travel this road. Now, today, our mission is to dream, to fantasize, if you will, about how we could create content in the modern world at the juncture between what sci-fi writers want to write about, between what companies or Russian state corporations, tech companies would like to have books about, between what the government wants, represented by us, for example. We are going to learn from foreign practices. Hopefully our foreign guests will share about them. So let's think about what we all should be dreaming about. What do we want to see? What do we want to read about? And what do we want our children to read and see and get inspired by? So this is what I'd like us to talk about today. We have a free-flowing discussion. We have speakers at nearly every table. So if I may, I would like to give the floor to Andrey Timonov, the acting head of communications department of Rosatom. I've been working with Mr. Timonov in various areas. We have a number of joint initiatives. But my question to you, as a Rosatom, a very innovative company representative, is as follows. All corporate leaders of companies such as Apple, Microsoft, Intel, you name it, interact with science fiction writers. They create futuristic designs, they create content, they report on some breakthrough developments, they set up foundations and endowments to finance future developments. What's Rosatom's stance? What are you doing that will surprise us in 10 years? First and foremost, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for giving me the floor and inviting me here. I'll begin with more mundane things. The cakes here are very delicious, by the way, but let me talk about why nuclear industry, doesn't matter if it's in Russia, in China, in the US, why the nuclear industry prioritizes long-term prognostication and forecasting. We work with very long cycles. It takes 25,000 years for plutonium to reach semi-decay. So some developments take decades to complete, like thermonuclear energy began to be researched back in the 1950s, and we're still not reached industrial production. When we sell a nuclear power plant, our client realizes that it will run for 100 years. It will take 15 years to build and 35 years to decommission. So they are asking us, what is the world going to be like in 100 years? So we do have a stake in knowing how we're going to run our NPP 100 years from now. Now, if you want to look at how the past works today, look at the sun. What's going on? What we see at the sun happened 8 minutes ago. A nuclear power plant is the future expressed in stone. We are preparing for challenges that an NPP may encounter in 10 and 50 years or 100 years, like something falling out from the sky, like a tsunami, like an earthquake, and so on and so forth. So we do care about the world where our NPPs are going to function in 100 years. So we tapped MGIMO's Institute of International Studies to come up with a very interesting study of works by writers from in the Pacific region, Africa, and South America. We're talking about local authors who operate obviously in their environment. What they're writing on is based on the collective subconsciousness of their regions, and their works distill certain culture codes. So they've analyzed this, and these are 8 takeaways. First of all, it's not just in China, but also in Africa and even in DPRK, there are pretty good sci-fi works being created. Now, these works of science fiction follow a certain global trend, which says that there's a crisis looming. Everyone predicts a crisis. A typical line has to do with the fact that the Western elites will manufacture this future crisis. So many of these works have a certain anti-American sentiment. Washington as a beacon is not to be seen as a beacon of values or of technology, and the US is often cast as the bad guy, which means that the future role of Russia is seen in a much more positive light. We are not associated with aggressive Western colonialism, and we, as the descendants of the Soviet Union, are associated with channeling scientific progress and associated with a country that creates large infrastructure projects in Africa. Number 2, how is this crisis overcome in the future? There are 2 different approaches. Africa and Latin America, based around the Atlantic Ocean, mostly appeal to collectivism. So challenges of the future according to them, can only be overcome together by profound cooperation, whereas Indo-Pacific countries have a different approach. First and foremost, the idea is that, like in China and India, they write about using your own resources. And interestingly enough, this is also typical of the DPRK. You need to be self-reliant to overcome this crisis. Number three, governments have different attitudes to sci-fi content creators. Sometimes there's a complete ban, which is usually based on religious grounds in some countries of the Persian Gulf, all the way to fostering, promoting, and even controlling, somehow guiding sci-fi writers, which is what we see in China, where the government recommends that writers write according to the long-term development strategy of their country. Colonization 2.0 is another important theme. Countries of the south of the Atlantic region are afraid of future digital colonization based on this division of labor and the growing gap, technological gap between collective Atlantic South and the Atlantic North. They're afraid of digital enslavement. And the Western idea of progress doesn't work for these countries. They want to come up with their own idea of progress based on their own resources. What sets Chinese literature apart, especially lately, is demonstration of proactive Chinese leadership, both moral and technological, relying on modern technology, including military technology. Number 6, which is very interesting for the Atlantic region, and here I'm talking about Latin America and Africa. This is imbuing science with certain magical or mystical potential, which probably appeals to the indigenous peoples of those countries. Number 7, climate challenges do exist, but they vary from country to country. So the challenges of tomorrow are exaggerated versions of current challenges. So coastal littoral countries are afraid of rising sea levels. Desert countries describe crises that have to do with deserts encroaching on everything. And African countries, this last point, love space because they don't have many clouds and they don't have so much lights from lit up cities, so it seems like outer space is nearby. The same applies to India, that's very invested in exploring the moon, which probably is rooted in Indian religion. And Bollywood is also important for forming narratives in India. And here I would like to wrap up my presentation. Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause to Mr. Timonov. Thank you for staying within time limits. I didn't mention it, but really you have 5 minutes for your remarks. So let's try to observe this time limit. Thanks for sharing your vision. Now I know that nuclear power plants are our future, so let's dream together about how they will provide us with electricity. Now, table number 2, I'd like to give the floor to Elvira Dovletyarova, Director of the Agrarian and Technological Institute of RUDN University, and the Director of Landscape Architecture department there. Different science fiction writers, and I mentioned it before, and we all know, used to be connected to science. Arthur Clarke was a physicist, for example, so they would all be inspired by the works of the academia. He was trained as a physician, as a mathematician, worked on radars, and there are many other examples of this kind. They were like those Renaissance people, or people of the 19th and 20th century, people who were both scientists and writers. It's hard for me to give present-day examples of the same kind of universal approach. Are you prepared to help writers create their content? Maybe create content in the form of blogs or TV series. Can you consult them, and what can you do for them?
Of course, we are scientists and we need to communicate with the society because for us it is crucial to spread our ideas to each participant of our society. And I would say that I have very interesting people sitting at our table. You say that there are no so many sci-fi scientists having the education this year. In fact, Andrey said that he's an embryologist, and he also presented me his book, and I will absolutely pay my time to learn the interesting things written in this book and what's going to happen to the genome of a human being. As for chemists, by me I have here Stepan Kalmykov, the deputy president of the Russian Academy of Science, and when before the breakfast we were exchanging our views on sci-fi writers, he said that he likes Strugatsky brothers, so you could address to him and he would absolutely comment and give his opinion on the future of chemical substances and not only polymers but also some other will give some other information on atomic power plants and reactors that were touched upon by the previous speakers. But I also work in the High School of Economics and the Russian Friendship University. So I would say that I love Kirill Gorbachev. He's my favorite writer. And being a small girl, little girl in Astrakhan, I was dreaming of becoming a scientist. And what do you think about me? Of course, the father of Alice, who was a zoologist in the space, was something very specific for me. This was a very specific character, and I loved his job. And me myself, I was dreaming to become Alice, as all other girls of my generation. And when I got a chance to choose what I want to be at school, I decided that I will become a scientist. And it seems to me that you writers, science fiction writers, you make rise to new scientists of the future, and you will give the impact on how high they will be able to rise and how far they will be able to fly. So it is important for them to go very far, to be able to fly very high, to step over the horizon, and only the scientist is able to do this, the one who can dream. And all the dreams are created by our sci-fi writers, and we do not stop to watch fantasy series, read books of such kind, and this is very important for us and for the society. So please work with us, especially that we do a lot for the future, and my working group loves and adores its work on the modeling of the climate, and what used to be in the books is our reality at present. We can already calculate the models of the climate, and we can understand how many hours more a person will be able to live in the future. This is our reality of today, the reality of the scientists. So communicating with us, sci-fi writers can get new ideas that they had never had before. We all remember the books of Kirill Gorbachev, and we remember his description of the future city, and we do such cities, smart cities, today. So I would like to call upon everybody to make some kind of sci-fi seminar that we could participate in regularly, for example, every month, to generate some new ideas, and the production managers could take our ideas for practice. So look at us, a scientist is a very interesting person who's interested in music, in different kinds of exhibitions, who is easy to understand for the general public, and who can inspire not only his team and the scientists he works with the younger generation, but also the general public. I will take part in today's symposium with my team and present my ideas also to the school children. So this is really crucial, and I would like to invite everybody to our session, the Meals of the Future, which will take place at 6:30. So we will see if the meat will be done from nuclear fuel or we will be eating insects. So this is the end of my speech. I think we should have more events of such kind to make this image of the future where we will be able to step over the horizon of the conscience, of dreams, and will let us feel the energy that we had in our childhood. Thank you very much. Thank you, Elvira. So I think the scientists are ready. We can see that they would love to give such consultations to everybody. And actually, I think I would be able to say that I don't know such people, but in fact, they're already here. And with us, we have today Mr. Slyusarenko, the PhD in physics and mathematical sciences. So, in fact, as for a PhD, I was supposed to finish this project on the 1st of November. So this was what I was set. But in fact, the scientific council is on a break. So just a second, I would like to tell a little bit more about you. So Slyusarenko Sergey is a science fiction writer, also the one of the creators of Stalker game. So my question to you is how you manage to overlap or to live together with the two of these activities of yours. And my second question is about the popularity of fantasy worlds. How do they compete with each other? Is fantasy something that contradicts the science fiction, or they live together? So thank you very much for this question. I never thought that science fiction could contradict somehow fantasy. And when I was actively involved in both areas of work, like in science and lasers and fluid crystals, and in the evening I was writing books. And usually I was writing my materials during my work trips and business trips when I had long evenings when I had nothing to do. So actually I had time, and I thought that all of this information corresponded to my life. And as for the fantasy and science fiction, as for the competition between them, fantasy is interesting because they attract older people, just as fairy tales attract kids. They produce some structured atmosphere that we know, but further, there are same evil creatures that in the kids' fairy tales, like Baba Yaga and Ivan the Fool and other characters. So I have a novel that I first wrote only the synopsis of, and this was a science fiction fantasy at the same time. Of course, there is magic, there are great almighty creatures, but what should an ordinary person do to become a magician? So this was my question, to become a real magician in the real world. So this was the experiment of mine, and actually I managed to finish this novel. I think there is nothing bad about competition. In fact, it even does not exist. So a good writer of sci-fi would always be a good author of fantasy novels, and same for vice versa. Sir Arthur Clarke, who wrote Three Hearts, Three Lions. Oh no, it was Paul Anderson, I'm sorry. So he is explaining his fantasy world from the point of view of the science and scientists. So it is not the most important target or goal of this novel, but still. And as for the future, for the last several years, I'm a professor, being a professor in my alma mater, the faculty where I studied, and I understand that I can see into the future, and I call students kids. And the kids that follow my classes are our future. They have the eyes which look into the future. They dream about science, about work. And when we visited a power plant, it was a real adventure for me and for them, because they liked it very much and they want to live in this future. And this is fantastic. This is fantasy. And just one example about the girl of the second year of studies. She was doing some lab works, and then she called her mom saying that she was working on a new apparatus and new machinery, and she was so excited that she wanted to send a photo to her mom of this machinery. So I'm sure that everything will go well. So have a very good chance. And all the best to you. So a few figures that I would like to mention. According to the data of Samizdat internet site, there are 124,000 books, and in sci-fi 124,000, and fantasy 120,000. And the Russian Literature Union also wrote down the information about the ranking of the sci-fi books. So the first place is taken by the Chinese author, and in 2023 there were more than a million of exemplars, more than a million of books issued in the sphere of the Chinese writers. So I think that the situation is quite astonishing. Maybe there is some competition, but maybe also some help between the two genres. So now I'd like to give the floor to Roberto Quaglia, to the sci-fi writers. There is a quote of yours. Now the sci-fi writers do not understand the fantasy. Is it true? Is there a chance for those writing about the future of the science to give some interesting image in their books, or not? So I'm very sorry, I don't speak Russian. It's a too difficult language for me.
I'm forced to speak English. Okay, if I understood well, yes, you mentioned one of my quotes, which is that actually science fiction writers in the current time, often they don't even manage to grasp the science, which is current, but this is not their fault. It's the fault of the future shock. The future shock was envisioned in '72 by Erwin Toffler, I think, and it refers to the problem of accelerating technological progress that would lead to a state where the progress and the changes are so fast that actually the human mind cannot keep pace with it, so that people would start to get disoriented and confused. And this was already in the 70s. I mean, he was stating that this was already in the problem in the 70s. Now this problem has escalated, so it has escalated to the point that in the past it was affecting normal population. Now I think it's affecting also us, science fiction writers, I mean, also the most imaginative people, because we cannot actually know everything which is known at the present moment. So we already live in the future. There are a lot of techniques that exist and we don't know. So maybe we fantasize about future techniques which are already surpassed in the present, because maybe there is already something better now, we simply don't know. So this is a serious problem. It's a serious problem because, of course, if you don't understand the present properly, also your imagination of the future is flawed. So basically, your contribute of imagination for the general imagination, is not necessarily a positive contribute, but because you start from a non-existing future, non-existing present. Now, this problem becomes even more serious in the West, because I'm in the West, so I see the problems, especially in the West. We know now that there is big divisions in the world, and also in terms of narratives and understanding of for example, geopolitical issues and so. And the point is that in the West now, I can witness a sort of very, very sophisticated brainwashing, which is done with techniques. Again, we're speaking about science, techniques of mass manipulation, so techniques of psychological, scientific manipulation, which are not known, I mean, people don't know them, so they are not protected against them, but even science fiction writers don't know them. So I have to witness my fellow Western science fiction writers. I have some very good friends, very famous writers, that are stuck inside, you know, the bubble of a hallucination, which is created by them by scientific mental manipulation. So this is very a big problem in the West, because then all the, let's say, the intellectual value of their extrapolation is limited. So basically they depict non-existent futures, because they are based on a reality which is already different, you know. Okay, this is one of the aspects, you know, that I'm dealing with it, with that now, because apart from my science fiction activity, I've also been researching especially the mass manipulation through, by the way of, for example, Hollywood movies, how to use meta-communication, for example, to manipulate. So this is a very important point in general, since we are speaking about how to create content and how to, let's say, inspire future generations and current generations, is one key element, again, about science which already exists, but is not hard science, is cognitive science, is applies to psychology, sociology, and so, is just the use of meta-communication, which is stronger than the content. So the frame sometimes is more important than what's inside the frame. This is used actively in negative propaganda. I call it negative because maybe I don't know don't like the content, but it should be mastered also for positive propaganda, exactly to counter the negative. It's like sorcery, like magic. You can have white magic or black magic, but if there is black magic, you must develop white magic. Otherwise, you will be a victim of the white magic. I don't know if this allegory can help. Okay, I see my 5 minutes are over. I just mentioned that, for example, there is also subliminal communication. Now, for example, I'm wearing a tie with Mickey Mouse. Maybe you didn't notice. Tomorrow, maybe I should have one of Masha and the Bear. So this is just to speak about subliminal communication. Thank you.
Grazie mille, Roberto.
So thank you very much, Roberto. So in case we need to develop black magic, we should also work with white magic, and this is a good recipe for the future, for every day. Thank you very much once again, and now I would like to welcome Mr. Panov, science fiction writer, one of the authors of cycles like Mysterious City and others. So my question is connected with the conflict between white magic and black magic. We know that in the older times and in the novels that were written there, when we were talking about the fourth technological revolution and about genome engineering, about space exploration, now it's the sixth technological era when we're talking about nano-energy, nanobiotechnologies. We should dream about this sphere. What do you think about it? Is it an exhausting list or no?
Good morning. No, this is not an exhaustive list, and can't be exhaustive because our civilization, our world, is much more complex and much larger than what nano or biotechnology can do. They can only change some things around. But first of all, thank you for leading with this. The heyday of science fiction happened in the 1950s and 60s. And I think it was a response to the scientific and technological boom that occurred in the 1940s. And driven, to a certain degree, by World War II. As we know, humankind started World War II using planes with wooden parts and horse-driven carts, and we ended it with jet engines, nuclear weapons, and rockets. So it was a huge boom, comparable only to what happened in the 19th century, and everyone saw that. That unfolded in front of everyone's eyes. People appreciated science as a factor in humanity's development. So the question was, what's next? And sci-fi writers tried to provide an answer. Read authors who wrote back in the day. I'm sure many of you have. They didn't have a question of whether we would be able to fly to stars at the end of the 20th century, or that perhaps we'll inhabit the whole solar system in the early 21st century. It was a given to them. But then humanity took a wrong turn at some point. But science is getting more complex. Genetic studies, digital studies, computer science began back in the same days as well, and we're developing and building on those things right now. So what happens is that development also always goes towards more complexity. So I think it's getting more difficult, even for our colleagues from Rosatom, to explain to the ordinary person what they are doing. It's like reading a sci-fi books. Surely you can simplify it, but an ordinary person would have a very hard time figuring out what modern science is doing. It's like a fantasy world. It's like magic, even. So this is the attitude people develop these days. And I think we need to communicate about our scientific achievements, about what we have. Because there's this image that we do have our own domestic science, and it provides not just ideas, but material goods. If we know that some ideas are really helping our progress, we create this environment of interest in science. And then the next question arises, what's next? And then sci-fi writers can answer this question. We have this thing now, and here's what we might be able to do going forward. Thankfully, modern technology allows science fiction writers not only to learn about what's going on, but also to talk to the scientific community. When you're working in this area, it's relatively easy to tap the right specialists, and many of them are receptive. They answer your questions. They show you what they're working on. There's been a great thought voiced today that scientists provide ideas. There's cross-pollination between scientists and writers. We listen to what scientists come up with, and we develop their ideas. But there's a triangle. There are also our readers. We need to be aware of them. They should find it interesting what we write about. Now, talking about sci-fi, it's read by mostly younger people. Men or women, doesn't matter. They are kids, you know? And they are more forward-thinking than us. Surprising as it may seem. Maybe on a subconscious level, they always are wondering what lies ahead. What are they going to do in the future? Maybe not all of them, but still, everyone is curious about what lies ahead. Now, you need to engage them, to spike their interest, to show what science can do for them and what they can do for science. So they need more than just information about what we have designed. They need to have some exciting images, something to fill their head with, something to give them a push in the right direction. Elon Musk is a great case in point, by the way. We're talking about images, something that can be a guide for these younger people. So they might think, I will go to my garage and maybe come up with a quantum computer, maybe. Why think small? And tomorrow I will become the next Steve Jobs. This image works. Kids think in images, and they need to be fed those images. Thank you, Mr. Panov. You took the words right out of my mouth. That was a great segue into what I was going to say next. Just recently, this summer, the Institute of Modern Media searched the image of the modern movie character in Russia. Who do people want to see on the screen? And they did it by age groups. 18 to 25-year-olds, 25 to 35-year-olds, and then older folks. Now, in the older age groups, they wanted to see some powerful security forces officers in place one, and in second place was like an engineer kind of guy. And in third place, older people wanted to see a scientist, whereas 18 to 25-year-olds only wanted to see scientists. The scientist was only in eighth place, whereas who they named as number one character they wanted to see was an entrepreneur like Elon Musk. So younger people don't prioritize science all that well, and I think there's a lot of ground to cover there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Panov. And now, with your permission, I would like to give the floor to your colleague, Goran Skrbonia from Serbia. Goran, could you say a few words about your vision, your perspective from Serbia? What do you think is going to happen to science fiction writing going forward? What should you write about?
Gentlemen, it is a great pleasure and great honor to talk to you today, and thank you, Mr. Moderator, for this question. I am quite aware that Serbia is well known by its top athletes like Jokic and Djokovic, but we also have our Dr. Zoran Živkovic, who won a World Fantasy Award, and we have a very vibrant and active science fiction scene with great tradition. I had an idea to give a short introduction to Serbian sci-fi scene, but I don't think that I have time enough for that. I will only mention some authors from late 19th century, like Milovan Glišić, who was a famous Serbian realist writer, but he also wrote the first vampire story. By the way, Serbia is supposedly responsible for the word vampire that became well known throughout the world. And Mr. Glišić wrote this story entitled 90 Years After, based on folklore from rural parts of Serbia concerning vampires. And later it was made into a TV movie, which still frightens the audience today. It was called She Butterfly. And also in 1902, we had the first real science fiction novel by Lazar Komarčić, and its title was An Extinguished Star. It was about the travel through a solar system with a lot of metaphysics, but astronomy as well. However, throughout the 20th century, through all the regimes in ex-Yugoslavia, literary critics were not too fond of science fiction, and they deemed it to be something trivial, something for kids or youth. But things changed in the late 60s and the 70s with space exploration and its popularity. And after that, the scene exploded. We had a lot of novels published, both by Anglo-Americans and the Russian authors. We all read Zamyatin, Tsiolkovsky, we read Belyaev, we read the Strugatsky brothers, and we were very well known the themes, the topics, and the development of science fiction from both sides, let's say the West and the East. Now today we have a lot of novels being published. However, the themes have veered from hard science fiction to dark fantasy, horror, and especially epic fantasy. There is an immense popularity of the series of books concerning the Slavic mythology. So it is a big thing now in Serbia. And concerning our main topic today, I would like to say that communicating science is the most important thing. Back in the 60s and the 70s, we had a guy called Milivoj Jugin, who used to comment all the flights to the moon, and when Yuri Gagarin came to visit Belgrade, and also the crews from Apollo missions, he was there to comment. Today we also have a similar guy called Slobodan Bubnjevic, and he organizes weekly regular panels about different interesting topics in science. And I had the pleasure to be a participant at one of them concerning the Fermi paradox. So this is the way you communicate science and attract people to think about scientific research and achievements and use it in their content. We also have this association of science fiction aficionados called Lazar Komarčić, that was established in 1980 and still is going on strong. And most of the science fiction writers and screenplay writers and directors and so on were members at some time of that association. We also have a non-governmental organization called Petnica that is involved in promoting science to elementary school, grammar school, and university students, as well as the teachers and instructors. And it exists since 1982, and they have realized more than 3,000 programs from 15 disciplines of science and humanities and so on. So communicating science is very important, like, I don't know, Carl Sagan used to do 50 years ago, and Neil deGrasse Tyson is doing today. And we have to use, I think, internet as the best tool for that. And of course, we all do it when we Google something up, when we need to find some explanation, or we need to make our stories plausible. Then we use the internet. And I think that this interaction between the scientists and the content creators could be well promoted by establishing maybe an international website that would cover all current scientific achievements with serious administrators who would filter out the false or fake news and something like that. And enable all content creators to get acquainted with the latest scientific achievements. And this being a two-way street, the scientists would also be inspired by the works of the science fiction writers to go on with their research. So that's about it. I don't know if I have time, but I'm here for all questions afterwards. So. Okay.
Colleagues, thank you so much. Goran, thanks for this introduction to the inner workings of this field in Serbia. As for Slavic myths, of course, we are seeing the growing popularity of this topic. It's happening in Russia as well. Now, talking about trends, I have a couple of slides here. Can we have them on the screen, please? That might seem interesting to you. Just a couple of figures on book sales. This has come from Amazon, the largest book website. The top grossing genres. Romance, erotics, $1.44 billion. This is like romance is the best grossing genre. Crime, mystery, 728 million. Science fiction fantasy is in fourth place, 590 million. And let's take a look at the next slide. So right now, there is still a lot of ground to cover. And again, here they classify sci-fi and fantasy together. Horror is a distant fifth, which is good, in my opinion. Now, thank you. That's it for my slides. Now, for comparison, Some figures of the Chinese Conference on Science Fiction, the income of the industry in 2023 reached 113 billion yuan, which is up 29% than in 22, which means the Chinese sci-fi book market is growing rapidly, 30% year on year. That's a lot. So I would like to give the floor to Sun Yue, the CEO of Chengdu Future Light Culture Company, founder of Future Science Fiction Master Award, honorary professor of Hong Kong University and the Russian Economic University named after Plekhanov. My question to you, Mr. Sun Yue, Lutzi Sin, the writer, the problem of three bodies was turned into a movie in China and the US. Wandering Earth grossed millions of dollars. Just recently, we would never hear anything about Chinese sci-fi. And back in the day, probably sci-fi wasn't all that popular in China itself. So what has been done lately to produce this phenomenon of Chinese sci-fi, and what's being done right now? Thank you so much. I will speak in Chinese with your permission. My name is Sun Yue. And thank you, Mr. Moderator, for your question. You all know that sci-fi in China has been progressing at a fast pace in China. Lu Cixin, with his problem of three bodies, is a very well-selling author, record-breaking. The Wandering Earth, the box office of that movie was astounding. All of the figures that you mentioned. This is capturing the world's attention. Now, this has to do with the overall policy of promoting Chinese culture. Let me tell you a few things about how our authors are getting support. Over the past 12 years, we've seen the implementation of a certain program to foster talent. The circle of these authors who were getting support grew larger, and sci-fi became a new driving force behind promoting Chinese culture globally. Now, talking about Lu Cixin, his works, or his work rather, lends itself easily to turning it into a movie in different formats. This work that has been selling in huge numbers around the world, and that was turned into several movies, the three-body problem, resulted in enormous revenues in yuans and in dollars, both in China and elsewhere. Similar records show how successful culture projects can be, and that looking into the future pays. You need a culture that imbued with optimism, that carries the notion of technological progress. When you have rapid progress in society, you can channel these ideas and these meanings. This situation really applies well to the development of sci-fi. Talking about China, the genre itself is not Chinese. It's actually a genre that was transplanted to China. But China, the same happens to technologies. They are brought to Chinese soil and then they take root there. The same happened to sci-fi. It's developing in China and growing to meet the challenges of the present times.
Of course, these are the problems that interest people, and of course, science fiction and the novels and the popularization of these novels have a number of goals. They reflect the efforts of our government on the popularization of knowledge, on science, and on the recent developments of science. And of course, there is good propaganda of this development of the results, and we hope that what we managed to grow in our country and the creative forces that are guiding our society could be put into movies, into films. And the people who never were interested in science fiction, once they see a movie, would become fans of this genre, and of course it will influence in a good way their lives. This is a constant and multi-step way as the development itself. And our attention to science fiction, if talking about China, is closely connected with the fact that this is a long-term strategy which is implemented by our government. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Sun Yu. So, if I understand not everybody got headphones, of course I will not retell everything, but I will sum up your presentation that there is a step-by-step strategy which took 12 years to get to success, and now you have a box office all over the world and the growth of sales of science fiction books. All this are results of this strategy. So China has always been known and famous for its long-term strategies and ideas, and we shall think that in 5 or 3 years we will see even more Chinese films in the sci-fi genre, and we will see them in Russia, in Russian cinemas and online theaters as well. So, and now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Gordeyev, the general producer of Okko online movie theater. And this is a movie theater which is known for its hot movies, for hot releases. But what is bad for us is that they like movies about some killers, serial killers. But still, what about sci-fi on your platform? Thank you very much, and dear colleagues, I'd like to start with saying that. Despite our discussion of the strategy of the future, many authors and script writers who have no education, no special education in this sphere, keep writing such novels, such scripts, because for script writers this is a very interesting experience and they want to try it. And each creative person once starts fantasizing about the world that he has never seen, has never been to, and has never felt. But as for the online movie theater, I would like to tell you what we're lacking in and what we are facing right now. When we make a movie on the medicine, for example, some procedures, we have an opportunity to consult doctors, scientists in the sphere. But when we do a detective story, same thing, we can ask some questions to investigators or special services, intelligence. But when it comes to fantasy and science fiction, we don't know where to address. So it's impossible to ask a magician for advice. Of course, we will not ask any Slavic evil creatures or anybody or shamana for advice, and we need such dialogue to exist, to take place, because our viewers do not like stories which are not based on some real things or facts. And they are unable to fantasize about the future when there are no grounds for this. And as for the series that we're working on right now, we have some script writers who do not have PhD in scientific spheres, but still they're writing some great stories about 2074, about the future when the people live in omni-universe and they wear spectacles all the time, and the principal character starts having the ache in his eyes, and he needs to take off the spectacles, and he understands that for 10 years he has been living in Omni universe, and he needs now to learn everything from scratch, from the very beginning. So we try to analyze the fear of the person to live in another universe, and we understand that people are afraid of these universes, and our generation have a very special opinion about AI. We think that everything about AI is what is in the Matrix film or Terminator. We don't have positive experience in the use of technologies, and we don't have this experience transferred to movies. Whether it is interesting for our viewers, for spectators, yes, it is, and this is what allows them to deep dive into these impressions, into the world, into another universe, which will give hope for the future. And in case he sees only in his world that technologies will defeat him, destroy the world, of course they will not watch such films. So the information that is around us is quite difficult. We want to find hope, at least in the movies. So there is an example on the culture of sci-fi, and it was not so popular in Russia. So the latest popular things date to the Soviet times, but now we have created a series, Smarter Than Me, the story on the guy who changed places, who swapped places with a voice assistant in his phone. Of course, this is just a fantasy, but it gives a good impression to our viewer, and this is how they understand that artificial intelligence is not so frightening as they think. It's not so terrifying, and it is possible to manage it. And in our sci-fi, we write scripts about post-apocalypse and cyberpunk when there is no hope, and this is not what our viewers want to see, and this is not what makes the genre popular. And as Alexey said, the third and the fourth places are occupied by fantasy and sci-fi, but in case we join some detective story to it, of course I understand I have only 5 minutes, sorry, so we could join some other genres that would follow with the cultural code of our country, that will make the fantasy more popular. For example, if for talking about the magical place, another detective story, which is also a combination of Russian fairy tales and a detective story, and this is interesting for our viewers because they feel the essence, they feel the spirit of this movie. And as for science fiction, I think that very many things are connected with the place of the person, the universe of our destiny. We could talk a lot about nanotechnologies, about nuclear energy, but still any writer is trying to understand, to research into the future, how my children and my grandchildren will live in 15, 100 years, how will the technologies influence the world around us. And this is what the writers need today. And I hope that together with the Institute for the Development of the Internet, we will create this dialogue, and we will be able to talk to futurologists. Because when I need somebody, I'm sad that there is one, we'll find him for you. So no, this is not what I need. I need a real contact, and the authors need this contact, because otherwise they will create in their script something that exists only in their brain. And fantasy and science fiction provide us with a hope, with new horizons, and if we want our kids to strive for something, we could drive them there through fantasy, through science fiction. So we should help them in this journey. So this is how the future will appear, through series, through books, and of course we should understand that series are much more popular today than books, so there is an opportunity for us to cover this ground. So thank you very much. As for futurists, of course, I was also sometimes concerned about this question, and there are such people in there were such people in the Soviet Union. There was one, and since then, when we ask somebody about the future, we have magicians, tarot specialists, astrologists, everybody, but no futurists. This is a real problem for us, and maybe the State Duma could legalize or make it legal to become not a blogger but a futurist, and this could be also the education that we could get in one of the universities, in Kalyazin University, for example. So good luck to you, and we hope that you will create lots of good content for the future. Colleagues, yesterday there was an event which was called the Script Room, and there were several of them. This is an experiment to join different people following the model that I was talking about and try to fantasize about the possible content. So there were representatives of different business circles, companies, producers, writers there. And now I'd like to give the floor to our colleagues who will draw a conclusion to this event. So now I'd like to give the floor to Kopyov Yevgeny and to Maria Zalunina, so the director, the CEO of Exmo Publishing House and the head of CSR of National Media Group, GSR. So they will talk about what happened in the Script Room and about the results of this work. Thank you very much. Good morning. So today we have been discussing for a long time that the situation with science fiction is not so good in our country, and following the figures that we saw, of course, science fiction occupies only the 4th place in the ranking, but if we just say we need to work more, we need to write better, we need to promote better, of course, we will not get to any results. So we need new approaches. And we carried out an experiment recently when we created a synopsis for a series of a book of series, but at the very beginning we joined several ideas into one. So shall we start? So we joined many different people. We gathered them in one team. There were doctors, engineers, designers, and artificial intelligence. So this was a big team of different specialists, and we understand that artificial intelligence plays a more and more important role in creative content, and we need this instrument somehow be included in the process of creation of a book or a series. So what was the end of our work? We got a synopsis of adventure fantastic melodrama, and the name of this was The Hires of the Time, and the artificial intelligence doctors were thinking about it. The event which is at the start of the story is the 2080s, and this is the time where there is no more aging, and the idea of longevity, of making the person live longer, and there we consulted scientists, gerontologists, and we asked them how it could happen, what do we need to do for this, and of course the place for this novel is Russia of the future, Siberia. We also came up with new characters, primary characters. There were many of them, and together with the scientists, with doctors, designers, and writers, we were trying to understand who they will be, but still it's a little bit different with the focus in the book and in the series will be different, because we were thinking at the same time about the two projects. We were trying to create big universes, big worlds, and we understood that we will need to make a movie on this book. And so the main character is the one you can see in the center, this famous prominent Russian scientist who was at the very beginning of this work, of this world, who managed to battle senescence, but at some point he dies. This is a great journey of his. He goes to Siberia to struggle to face this problem, but I will not or I will give you some spoiler that he will sacrifice his life of his great grandkid to become immortal. And on the right, we have his wife who died at the time of his scientific discovery. So he's helping him as the quantum phantom of the story. And there are also some other characters that help or otherwise the main character of the story. So this is what I told you about. So here we have some setting for the plot. This is the Russia of the future. We have the city of the future, labs, underwater cities, cloud cities. So everything we created in the very beginning of the story to make the book easier and the creation of the book easier. So you also have the paper copy on your screen, so how it will look like. And here you can see a short resume of how the AI helped us in this project. So there are about 50 pages that were written by AI, and there were some psychological details, and there were some turnovers and interesting details that were created with its help. And now, together with one author, we'll take the synopsis and make it into the whole book. And now I'd like to give the floor to Maria, who will tell us about the series. Thank you. So I won't talk a lot about the script because we took the same synopsis made by our colleagues. So have a look at our team. You can see the most creative, the best of the best here on the screen, the best specialist of our sphere. So our goal was understandable, the genre is the same. What was important here, we were basing on the laws of drama, and we were making this content with a goal. So our main goal as filmmaking was to attract younger people into science. And so for us, the main character is a different one. This is a 15-year-old boy. And the whole series is his journey, what's happening to him, his transformation, his feelings, his choices, his traveling, and the transformation of this character into somebody else. So here the long text about the story, about our script. So the headline is Alive Among the Immortals, and you will know about it why. And same settings, but a little bit more picturesque. And this is how the poster will look like, and the advertisement. And I would say that this experiment, this new way of interaction is quite unique and is something that we need today. This is serious experience for interaction between different structures that got closer to each other. We rarely meet scientists and rarely have the opportunity to listen to them and to understand what's going on in the world of science. And even with our colleagues from EXMO, we don't have the opportunity to meet often as we would love to. And this was an opportunity to have this regular meeting between the EXMO and the national media company to create this big project. And moreover, AI was also one of the members of full-stake members of our team, and this was a big experiment for us. And most important that I would like to highlight is that this ways of cooperation, these ideas allow the people who have routine work of creating different content to touch upon different spheres, to have this grain and seed growing, and I'm sure that we will create some other different interesting projects. We will see into the future. We will listen and hear and see what is done by our colleagues, by scientists, and we are closely connected with EXMO right now. And I think we should create such script rooms more often, at least 4 or 5 times a year. Go to Rosatom, visit different places like Skolkovo or others. So thank you very much, and there will also be a video.
And now let's look at our promotional video. In a world where AI dictates the rules of life and quantum technology allows people to live forever, he is alone, one of a kind. He can't rely on technology. He is sick and he's aging. He feels and feels the pain. He feels compassion and sympathy for others. It looks like he's out of place in this world, but only he can contribute to the world the best of what the world had 200 years ago. He can retain the memories of his forefathers and their love. He can multiply the knowledge and continue this legacy in the quantum world. Last Human, watch on Channel 5. Thank you. Thanks, colleagues. Thanks, Maria. Thanks, Evgeny. Thank you for this immersive experience. Let's give a round of applause to those who worked in the script room yesterday. I hope that these concepts will bear fruit and will be implemented on streaming platforms, on TV, and so on. This was a first attempt. Let's see what it results in. Colleagues, thank you so much for participating in the discussion. Now we'll maybe take some questions from the audience. We do have a little bit of time left, some Q&A, maybe comments. Somebody would like to provide some feedback. Yes, Alexander, please. Please introduce yourself. The interpreter can't hear 1, 2. Sorry. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Alexander Kaufman. I'm the chairman of the Public Chamber of the Donetsk People's Republic, but it's immaterial. I'm also the founder of one of the major literary festivals, Stars in the Donbass. I've been listening to this discussion. I've had many questions, but let me just ask a few of them. Gavriil, you have a chance to consult, to get advice at scientific conventions. We invite you to Donetsk, to Stars in the Donbass, where you can meet a couple of hundred sci-fi writers. If you don't want to travel so far, there's Roscon, an event held in Moscow. And here, if you go to one of these conventions, you will get all the consultations you need. Then, we have also developed a few ideas for maybe not superheroes, but just Russian heroes. Alexey, I completely agree with you. You're absolutely right. One of the most sought after characters is indeed a security forces officer. We've surveyed, polled a number of target groups, and we've developed the image of a soldier named Gennady, with the call sign of Crocodile, who has fought in the special military operation. He has his last name is Tyorkin. He is the great-grandson of famous Vasily Tyorkin, and he carries a Cheburashka. We know there's an issue of rights. Soyuz-Multfilm has the rights to Cheburashka, for example, but they can use this idea and capitalize on it. Gennady Tyorkin, call sign Crocodile. It is true, with all my due respect to Chinese authors, I think that the amount of Chinese literature published in Russia sometimes is detrimental to our domestic colleagues who are no worse as writers than Chinese colleagues. So I think our publishers should prioritize Russian writers. What's the key to success of Chinese literature? I think they are giving the readers what they want. Readers are tired of reading about disasters, about some zombie apocalypses or nuclear dystopias. Readers want to have an image of a positive, clean, and bright future. I think there's a real need for that, and our Chinese colleagues have awakened to it, so they are giving their readers those images of a good future, and our authors have not yet caught up on to that. Thank you. Thank you for these remarks. Our organizers are telling us that our time is almost up. We have a couple of minutes more of content. So if you will excuse us, we'll show you a promo video about the Saturn game. It's 1 minute long video so that you can develop an idea of what's to come. Day 1. What does the operator feel waking up in the body of a robot far away from home on the orbit of Saturn? Does he feel no fear? Saturn is ruthless to its guests. What do you feel when you know that your home planet has only 3 days to live? Day 2. You're trying to decipher the secret of the apocalypse that will destroy this world. But does this world deserve to be saved? Day 3. Every time you keep dying and getting reborn, unable to find the way out of this loop. And now I'm here again. I'm leaving the capsule of reflection stuck between 2 worlds, being consumed by the mysteries of Saturn. But I will prevail. The plot line is that a Russian engineer in 2062 is waging a remote war on Saturn's satellites against extraterrestrial AI. Thank you, colleagues. And for wrapping up our meeting today, we'll have Lisa Selezneva. Good morning, dear symposium participants. It's been great to listen to you, and I learned that many scientists were inspired by science fiction, and this genre has also made an impact on global progress. Sci-fi writers provided the foundations for amazing technologies such as mobile phones, cars, and internet, and I am the creation of a sci-fi writer called Kir Bulichov, and I'm here with you today thanks to modern technology. Scientists come up with ideas, and then sci-fi writers come up with ideas, and then engineers implement them in practice. They make the future our present. So let's together work on the future for our kids. Let's create new characters and model the image of a multipolar world. See you in the future. Ha ha ha. Friends, thank you. Thank you for participating in this event. And now please scan the QR code on the screen and answer a brief survey. We care about your opinion.
Спасибо, коллеги, по QR-коду у нас.
Thank you, colleagues. Right, we do have a survey that you can access using this QR code. See you at the next symposium. Thanks a lot to everyone. See you later.